Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Before we get into that though, of course, the big story that broke on Wednesday was the death of Pat Patterson at the age of 79. Sad day for many wrestling fans and many wrestlers as well. If you look at the scores of wrestlers on social media on Wednesday who posted about Pat Patterson and what he meant to them, clearly, I think his biggest legacy in professional wrestling is the impact he had on all those wrestlers. You know, he had a reputation of being really brilliant with finishes, plotting out matches. I mean, he created the Royal Rumble match, which many people have talked about. So yeah, his contributions to professional wrestling at large cannot be disputed, cannot be denied. The stuff, like the ins and outs, the inner workings, the psychology of matchmaking and match building and stuff, no one else like Pat Patterson. And the work he did in the territories, in San Francisco territory, he helped build Roy Shire's territory on the West Coast. That cannot be disputed. He did so much for professional wrestling. But moving on to the Wednesday night shows, because that's what you came to see. Beginning with NXT, you open up with Damian Priest and the North American champion Leon Ruff taking on Santos Escobar and Raul Mendoza of Legado del Fantasma. There was a bit of a scuffle backstage earlier in the day, which leads to this tag team match, and Johnny Gargano has joined the commentary team here. Damian Priest early on beating the hell out of Mendoza when suddenly he sees a mysterious ghost face character in the crowd. The Halloween Phantom is back apparently, because well past Halloween. We're going into Christmas, folks, but we're still using the Scream mask, so there's got to be some kind of significance to that. Funny spot near the end where Leon tags himself in after Damian's got his arm outstretched getting ready for the reckoning. So he hits the finishing move, then Leon, who's tagged in, hits a frog splash on Mendoza to win the match for his team. And then we see two ghost face guys behind Gargano on commentary. What does that mean? How many Halloween Phantoms is Gargano and Candice LeRae employed here? The mind boggles to find out what the payoff for that's going to be. We get a scene from the Babyface Lady War-Games HQ where Shotzi Blackheart's hard at work making presumably a new tank, and then you see Rhea Ripley and Ember Moon show up and present her a gift, this presumably glowing engine. We don't actually see what's in there, but we'll find out, I'm sure, on Sunday. And then we see a very special hype package about a special look at the Undisputed Era, and the four of them are dressed in tuxes and they go out to this, I guess, a fancy restaurant, having wine and everything, which Pat McAfee's going to shit all over in his promo later on. But they talk about how this is the biggest challenge they've ever faced, and then Bobby Fish is like, well, the time for worrying is over, let's kick some ass. And so that's pretty much what we get from the Undisputed Era on this night before War-Games. We see Candice LeRae and her War-Games team backstage, including the newly healed Toni Storm. I missed that heel turn last week when I took the week off. Raquel Gonzalez says, when she's done with Shotzi Blackheart in the ladder match later on tonight, Shotzi will feel like she got run over by a tank. We go to our next match as August Gray takes on Cameron Grimes. He's got the leather strap in a burlap sack. Some symbolism as he gets ready for his strap match with Dexter Lumis at TakeOver. It's a short and sweet match here. Gray showing a lot of fire, but Grimes hits the cave-in to win the match. And then afterward, Grimes wants to send a message. He puts the strap on himself and August. He starts whipping him and stuff. August goes out of the ring, and then Grimes goes to pull, Gray in. He doesn't see what's going on, though. Dexter Lumis has appeared on the other side of the strap now, gives Grimes quite a spook, and beats him with the strap for a bit before Grimes runs away. It's weird. I'm in a weird spot with this storyline where I don't really care about the angle, but I'm enjoying the body language and just the shtick, the slapstick with Cameron Grimes and how he reacts to Dexter Lumis. I don't really care about who wins or loses this feud, but I just like the interactions they have. So the strap match, it doesn't really, of all the matches on the War-Games TakeOver, probably appeals the least to me, but I can appreciate what they're doing with the build of it at least. Jake Atlas takes on former Cruiserweight champion Tony Nese. Another brisk match here, and in the end, Atlas eventually wins the Cartwheel DDT. They say he won the biggest match of his career, against a guy who didn't even get an entrance for this match here. Afterward, Atlas is on the outside. He's being interviewed. He talks about how with him, it's always 3 steps backward for 1 big step forward. This win's important, and he's on his way to challenging Santos Escobar for the Cruiserweight title once again. So yeah, the match itself was short and sweet, but a good look for Atlas in the win. It's time for a speech from Pat McAfee and his pack. They make their way to the ring, and Pat says he's got no respect for the fans or for the Undisputed Era. Like I said earlier, he kind of mocks what they did in their video package earlier about they're wearing rented tuxedos that don't fit, drinking wine from a box in glasses. They're seated right next to the kitchen because nobody wants to know that they're there. He was pretty funny in his roasting of the Undisputed Era here. Talks about how talks about the money he spent to put Pat's pack together, and he wants the fans to feel the pain that the Undisputed Era will feel at War Games. Pete Dunne with the last word here. He rarely speaks. He finally gets to the microphone and says that this will be the end of the Undisputed Era. I thought it was a very good promo from Pat's pack here, and really sets the stage for their match on Sunday. We see an update on Xia Li and Boa. You can see them being repeatedly dunked in these big tanks full of water, and then when they're done, they look very tired, and they're both hit from behind by these kendo sticks, and we get some very extreme close-ups of some woman's face who seems to be the leader of all this, but you can't make anything out, but it is still remains very intriguing to me. Like, this is the most different thing out of anything else we're seeing from NXT right now, and I'm really hoping we get a good payoff to this angle here. Our next match sees Everrise, taking on the Grizzled Young Veterans. Zach Gibson and James Drake are back at NXT US for the first time in months. They showed up last week, and then as they make their entrance to this match, though, Imperium run in and they jump Everrise. They basically tell the vets the tag division's theirs. We have an impromptu rescheduling the match. Now we've just got the Grizzled Young Vets versus Imperium, Eichner and Bartel. The match is official. Not amazing as it goes on, and it ends in a no contest anyway when Everrise jump both teams. Then after the break, we see Everrise get into a car and they're shouting about how much they rule before they speed off. I want to hear more promos from those guys for sure. But I feel that I feel this match and this segment didn't really benefit anyone. Like, oddly enough, I think Everrise benefited the most in this thing because, you know, you see the big ballyhooed return of Gibson and Drake, and then it ultimately just kind of ends, first off, their return match, which is like kind of like a guaranteed, you know, kind of a cupcake win, so to speak, gets, you know, diverted when Imperium shows up. So you've got a match on paper that sounds great, but then it just doesn't really end, and no one really benefits from that. So if anything, Everrise right now gets the biggest bump in their stock from that segment. But as far as like trying to elevate, you know, Gibson and Drake and Eichner and Bartel, I don't think that really accomplished that. Time for another edition of Thatch as Thatch Can Wrestling, and this week Timothy's supposed victim is Rust Taylor, who last we saw in the Pure Tournament for Ring of Honor, but now he's signed to the Performance Center. I believe the name they called him here was Tyler Russ or Tyler Rust, so I didn't really quite catch that. But before anything really happens though, Thatcher turns around. Suddenly Tommaso Ciampa is standing next to Rust Taylor, and then Thatcher balks at first, but he goes for a takedown. Ciampa fights back, and suddenly Taylor comes in, Tyler, whatever you want to call him. He attacks Ciampa as well, and that allows Thatcher to take over. He chokes Ciampa out. You can see this wonderful gleam in Thatcher's eyes as he cinches it. He looks right at the camera and goes, "Eee, I've killed him." And then he drops him, and Ciampa's out. I thought it was a good segment, and it breaks up kind of the pattern we've seen from those live Thatch as Thatch Can segments. Seeing Ciampa getting involved, but ultimately kind of backfire on him was a nice little twist. And then afterward, we see backstage, Thatcher is very happy with the initiative that his protege took, and as he's talking, we see way in the background that Rust is being approached by Malcolm Bivens, who gives him his card, and he looks at it and gives it a good think, and I'm excited about that. I just love Malcolm Bivens as a character, and I really can't wait to see him back on TV. In your main event, a ladder match to determine the man advantage for the women's War Games match, because last week was the men's. Tonight you've got SHOTZI Blackheart taking on Raquel Gonzalez. You know, I said it last year, and I'll say it again this year. I think having 2 weeks of ladder matches back-to-back to determine for this stipulation, I think it's very short-sighted and kind of kills the impact of the ladder match when you're about to have them go into this ultra-violent War Games match like less than a week later. Anyway, nonetheless, it was a good ladder match. There was one curious spot here where SHOTZI goes for some kind of DDT on the apron, and it looks like Raquel just takes her own bump unassisted, and SHOTZI just flies off the ring and just onto the floor. SHOTZI with a cool cannonball move onto Raquel's back, and so her back bends in half, and then you see her driving her face into like the ladder set up on the side. By the way, during both of these ladder matches the last 2 weeks, they've had like the other team members on these just elevated platforms to look on from above and afar. And so you have the ladies here on the platforms. And by the way, SHOTZI's team is one woman short. We don't know who the fourth woman is yet. So it's, you know, 2 ladies there on the platform, and the other 3 are on the heel one. Indy Hartwell, who got injured in kayfabe and replaced by Toni Storm last week, she shows up with a ladder, helps the bad ladies go down and try and run into the ring. And then somehow another ladder is produced for the faces, and they also come down there. In all the chaos, suddenly Io Shirai shows up, and she does a great springboard jump onto Raquel's back as she's climbing the ladder, which is incredibly impressive. And I defy anyone, I dare anyone of you guys watching this to try and do the same thing yourselves and see how easily you can pull that off. So then Io dives onto everybody else, which allows SHOTZI to climb the ladder unabated and grab the briefcase. So she wins for her team. Her team has the advantage going into War Games, and it's very obvious now that Io Shirai has taken the 4th spot for Team SHOTZI. That was a very entertaining main event. The ladder match was done well, but I tell you what, spoiler alert, it's not going to beat what Dynamite did. On a chilly Jacksonville night, AEW presented a special edition of Dynamite themed Winter is Coming, the most hyped episode you've seen on Dynamite in their short history. It's a fully stacked show, beginning with the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal. It's the second annual version of this, where the final two guys in the ring will face off for that $50,000 ring that MJF currently holds. Some good angles playing out here, like Hangman kind of working with the Dark Order, at one point even being rescued by them, saving from elimination. Sean Spears getting some help from Tully Blanchard, helping load the glove. MJF working along with Sammy Guevara and Wardlow throughout. Miro looks dominant, but then the Inner Circle members eliminate him. We're down to the presumably final four of the three guys of Inner Circle and Jungle Boy. After some impressive moves on the apron, MJF dumps Guevara and Jungle Boy out, so you think it's just MJF and Wardlow left, but Orange Cassidy is actually still in this thing. He was never actually eliminated, but he's outside. He's brought into the ring, mounts a very big comeback, ends up eliminating Wardlow, which means it's down to him and MJF for next week fighting for that ring. Some fun moments in this matchup here, and like I said, I think it did a good job building up more than one storyline. I think that's just great to see that happen in Battle Royals, and I'm curious to see how Orange and MJF are going to do next week. Up next, Chris Jericho taking on Frankie Kazarian, two longtime vets who've never actually faced off one-on-one before until tonight. Jake Hager and Ortiz repeatedly interfere on behalf of Jericho in this thing, but Kaz is still able to fight back. Some great back and forth here. I love Kaz's comeback in this matchup. He's got Jericho on the walls for a very long time until MJF reemerges. He's got a towel in his hand, teasing he's going to throw it when Sammy Guevara shows up and takes the towel from him. Jericho sees Sammy with the towel. He's like, WTF, mate? And there's some close calls here where Kaz almost wins, but ultimately Jericho wins with the Judas effect. Sammy and MJF begin to scuffle. Wardlow and Hager begin to scuffle. Jericho finally breaks it up and tells them to cut out the bullshit and says in 1 week he's issuing an ultimatum. Either the Inner Circle just get their shit together and work together as a team with no more problems, or they break up entirely. Man, where is this going to go? How are they going to go this way with Inner Circle? Are they going to blow it off next week, or are they going to try and save it for just a little while longer and let MJF continue to fester throughout the group? The Young Bucks are interviewed backstage, asked about their match next week with the Hybrid 2. Suddenly we get the Acclaimed interrupting. That's Anthony Bowens and Max Caster. Caster busts out a freestyle where he mocks the Young Bucks book cover, basically saying, hey, you guys are brothers and you're looking at each other's dicks. That's the gist of his entire rap. When he's done with that, though, the Hybrid 2 come in and jump the champions. Before they can do any more damage, though, Daniels and Kazarian chase them off. And that's the end of that segment here as we go to next week for that matchup. I do like that, as the champions, the Bucks are still kind of in that phase where they're really working with other tag teams, not always the upper level tag teams, the more established teams, but we've seen it with how they do with Private Party, what they did with Top Flight a couple weeks ago, next week with the Hybrid 2, who've been around since the beginning, but are they're a lower tier tag team you don't really see on Dynamite that much, and now something's brewing between them and the Acclaimed all of a sudden. I do like how the Bucks continuously work with younger or less established or less exposed teams and trying to help give them that kind of rub. Dr. Britt Baker takes on legit LEYLA Hirsch. Before the match begins, you get a pre-tape promo from Britt doing her heelish thing, and just under his breath afterward, you can hear Tony say, what a bitch. The match begins, and LEYLA looks pretty good here. I think she shows off a lot of her technical acumen in this thing, a lot of her strength, but Britt still fights pretty dirty here. At one point, LEYLA goes for a dive on the outside, but she takes out Reba/Rebel instead. LEYLA looks to have the match won, but she takes too much time. Ultimately, you've got Baker coming back, hits the neck breaker into the lockjaw to win. Right after the bell rings, though, Thunder Rosa comes back, and she's looking for vengeance against Britt Baker. They fight, and then Reba gets involved, but Hirsch suplexes her. The fighting continues. Good match with Britt and LEYLA. Their characters both got over pretty well, and I like how they're keeping the feud with Britt and Thunder Rosa going. That's got some good potential. Well, last week, Taz put the Taz mission on Cody Rhodes. First time he's used that move in what feels like 100 years, after Cody went too far in bringing up family into the conversation. So now we have this grudge match as Cody and Darby Allin takes on Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks. All you have to know about this match is Cody and Darby win after you get the cutter, then the coffin drop onto Ricky Starks. Then afterward, the heels do a beatdown. Arn Anderson and Dustin Rhodes come in and they get beaten down as well. All hope looks to be lost when suddenly the lights cut out. We see a dramatic snowy video package on the screen, and it's Sting. The Hall of Famer makes his AEW debut, the first time he's been on TNT since March of 2001. Tony Schiavone loses his his shit on commentary with the classic "It's Sting" call, and the fans are losing their minds and everything. The baddies evaporate. Sting, just the cold, icy stare, gets in the ring, stares down Arn, stares down Cody, stares down Darby. That's a cool look. And then he leaves. And that's it. And just what a moment. That alone, I think, is like one of the biggest moments you'll see on Dynamite all year. What a coup for AEW to get Sting like this. I don't, they announced shortly after this that Sting has been signed to a multi-year deal with the company, which I think is rad. I think that, I don't expect him to wrestle full time. I don't know, who knows what his shape or his condition is after the match he had with Seth Rollins several years ago when he messed up his neck. But I mean, even to have him there at all under contract where he can just show up and be part of pivotal moments like that, that's all you got to do with Sting. In 2020, Sting is still over as hell, and the proof's in the pudding, and you can just see how the internet exploded over this tonight. And we've seen there is a precedent, there is a history of AEW using their legends a lot better for like the overall balance of the talent than what WWE does. When they bring in legends, it's to destroy the younger talent. Lately, it feels when AEW brings in legends, it's to complement the other talent. So who knows what the actual long-term goals of Sting at this point, but as of this moment, seeing that what happened, what an incredible moment that was for Sting to show up, I mean, I'm all for it. We then hear from the women's champion Hikaru Shida, who's got some words about Abaddon, who showed up last week to kind of make her intentions known that she's coming for the championship. Shida calls her a girl doing zombie cosplay. She's done cosplay before. What's the big deal? Suddenly we hear some clanging pipes in the background, and Hikaru's kind of shook. She kind of loses her train of thought and just like, I gotta go. So she's definitely like feeling the effects and seems to be intimidated by what Abaddon's doing, and I don't blame her because Abaddon be creepy. We get a pre-match promo from Jon Moxley where he talks about how the stakes couldn't be higher with his match with Kenny Omega. It's going to be like two warriors sword fighting on a mountaintop with lightning crashing behind them. A little nod to Pat Patterson here where he says the fans will go banana. And then we got our main event, World Championship match as Jon Moxley defends against Kenny Omega. Don Callis from Impact Wrestling. He did commentary for the Omega Page match at Full Gear, and he's back again doing commentary for this match as well. Things go from technical to brawly pretty quickly here. You see them fighting on the outside, then later back in the ring, Omega's kind of working Moxley's knee. Some great action in this match too, by the way. Moxley catches Omega in midair, hits a paradigm shift, but Moxley's not done. He brings in some chairs, not to hit, but to sit, and they do kind of a slap off, leading into a punch off. On the outside, Omega's slammed into some lights and appears to be knocked out. The referees check on him, but Moxley's not done yet, brings him into the ring. Don Callis on the apron now with a microphone saying he's hurt, stop it, but then he gets decked by Moxley as well. In the chaos with the referee distracted with Callis, Omega's got the microphone. He jabs Moxley in the face with it, so now he's busted open. Multiple V triggers and the one-winged angel for Omega to pin and win. Kenny Omega is the new AEW World Champion, snapping Moxley's multi-month reign since late February when he won the belt. And I'll talk about Moxley's reign in a little bit. Don Callis celebrates with his bud Kenny Omega. They run through the backstage area to their car. Tony Schiavone calls bullshit. And then on the microphone, Callis says, you gotta wait until next Tuesday to find out what's going on. And Alex Marvez like, Tuesday? But Dynamite's on Wednesdays. And then, Don Callis just blatantly says, next Tuesday, Impact Wrestling, Access TV, Kenny Omega will be there. So holy crap, now all of a sudden we've got this Impact AEW partnership, which, we kind of felt the seeds are being planted for that when you saw Callis there at Full Gear, but now it's like made official. Now it's just laid bare that Kenny Omega, the AEW champion, is going to show up on Impact Wrestling, a show, a company where in terms of the in-ring performance and the star quality, it's definitely been on the rise. They're doing some different things, some unique things, and they're getting attention, and now they're going to have even more eyeballs on them with AEW getting involved. I think this partnership will hopefully benefit both sides, and everyone's talking about it. Everyone's really intrigued by what's going on here. I don't think since the ROH New Japan merger several years ago, or not the merger, the partnership, were people as excited about what is on the horizon with this. We have no idea where it's going to go, but I'm very excited about this. I mean, gosh, and that kind of buries the lead of Kenny Omega being the new world champion. Now, Moxley had a hell of a run. I didn't expect it to go as long as it did, or for him to be as dominant as he was, but man, he just killed everybody. He went through all the contenders. no one can, no one can knock Moxley's run as champion. I think he carried that banner extremely well, had a hell of a 2020, in spite of everything being thrown at wrestling in general, at AEW. He was able to kind of carry that banner and lead AEW all year. He did a great job as champion, and who's to say he won't win the belt back again at some point. But Kenny Omega as the new champion, the prophecy is fulfilled, and really curious to see where the Kenny Omega era will take us, especially now that they're doing this partnership with Impact. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, and there's no deliberation this time, folks. Dynamite wins easily. It felt like the perfect episode of Dynamite. Probably one of the best, if not the best episodes they've had all year, if not ever. I mean, it was built like a pay-per-view. That's how they treated this thing in the build to it for weeks, and the theme they had surrounding it. I think it met or exceeded the hype in some cases. Some great action throughout, and a couple of holy shit moments as well. Like, NXT ain't got Sting. AEW had Sting this week, and that's a real big game changer, in my opinion, for the company. Not to mention Omega winning the championship, and then all of a sudden, like, this big twist of he's going to show up on Impact next week. Like, what a cliffhanger that is, too. And what a great match it was that preceded that moment. So yeah, great episode of Dynamite. NXT was fine, I guess, but I mean, it's not going to beat the moments you saw with Dynamite this week. And now, if there wasn't enough to talk about this week on Wednesday Warfare, now it's time for my predictions for this Sunday's TakeOver event, War-Games style, beginning with the strap match, Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes. Like I mentioned, this matchup holds my attention the least out of everything happening on the card this Sunday, but I have enjoyed the character work at least, so there's that. I think that Lumis is going to win. I think he's going to have Cameron Grimes' number for most, if not all, of this rivalry. Not going to hurt Grimes any, because I think he's a great hand. I think he's going to do well as a character. I think Lumis is going to keep doing whatever he's doing, and that'll be that. North American Championship triple threat as Leon Ruff defends against Damian Priest and Johnny Gargano. This could be a great matchup here. I think all three have very different styles. Like, Leon Ruff is probably the least exposed of the two of them, so I think he has the most to gain from this. He does a really good showing here. I think that ultimately Johnny Gargano is going to win this one. He'll become the first ever three-time North American champion. He'll find some sneaky chicanery way to win the title back. I'm sure the Halloween Phantoms, the ghost-faced people will be involved in this as well. But yeah, I don't see Leon Ruff having that championship after Sunday, and I don't know if Damian's going to get it yet either. So my pick is Johnny. In the men's War Games match, you got Pat's Pack, that's Pat McAfee, Pete Dunne, Oney Lorcan, and Danny Burch against the Undisputed Era. Now, if the UE don't win this matchup, I'm going to be very surprised. Just, the way they've been building up the Era and how they were written off, they're beaten down by Pat's Pack, and they had this big triumphant return, how the deck is stacked against them. I don't see them losing this thing, especially with how dramatically they lost last year's War Games. It'd be very poetic for them to come full circle and win triumphantly here against Pat's Pack. I don't mind Pat McAfee losing 2 in a row to Adam Cole in the Undisputed Era. I think he'll be impressive to watch as well. If his match with Cole earlier this year is any indication, I think he'll perform fine and do well enough in that thing. It will be an entertaining matchup, but my pick's the UE's going to win here. And then in the women's War Games match, you got Candice LeRae leading Raquel Gonzalez, Dakota Kai, and Toni Storm taking on Team Shotzi Blackheart alongside Rhea Ripley, Ember Moon, and Io Shirai, as we found out tonight. And so I think this one's going to be a babyface's win again. First off, Shotzi's going to come out with a new and improved super tank. It's going to be ooh and ah, and that's going to happen. And then the match happens. I think the faces are going to win. It's going to be, I think, a feel-good episode, or a feel-good takeover at least. Like, Gargano will be the exception, I think, of him coming back winning the championship. But the two War Games matches are going to, my prediction is going to be, it's going to lean very much babyface. But what did you all think of NXT and AEW this week? And what are your picks for TakeOver War Games this Sunday? Let me know in the comments section below. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.